the audience is screaming at creators for what they want, and those who recognize it and give them that are going to be the winners of the day.
This is Truly Independent, a show that demystifies the indie film journey by documenting the process of releasing independent films in theaters. Each week, Garrett Batty and I, Darren Smith, will update you on our journey, bringing guests to share their insights into the process and answer your questions. Welcome back, everybody. We got another episode of Truly Independent today. Garrett, it's good to see you.
Darren, good to see you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to another week, and I'm looking forward to this exciting episode.
Me too, because we have a guest. I love when we have guests. Steven.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Welcome to the show, Stephen Murray. We are so excited to have you. We chatted with you last week as a thruple here. We had a conversation. Let's not go there. But we had a great conversation. And by the end, Garrett and I were both like, we got to have you on our podcast. So you're here. Thank you for being here. Why don't you tell our audience who you are, your background a little bit, and then we can dive into our conversation today.
Sure. It is actually an honor, honestly, to be here. The conversation last week was great. I really dig what you guys are doing. And Darren, a lot of our interaction through social media has just been really cool. I mean, we're obviously kind of pointed in the same direction and thinking about a lot of the same things, which are all, in my mind, quite exciting and honestly fulfill a big part of my dream from the very early days of my career. Again, my name is Stephen Murray. I am the founder and co-CEO of Bingeable, which I imagine we'll chat about that in a little bit. So, but my background really is entertainment since the age of 19. I've been in almost every aspect of entertainment in one form or another. And have the scars to prove it. This has been a wild journey that started when I was 19 years old as a songwriter in Nashville, Tennessee, and then major label recording artist, and all of the insane travails of that career choice, which is clearly makes me a glutton for punishment, but. Have always been really, really passionate throughout my journey, starting as an artist myself, and then starting record companies and even publishing magazines, and then eventually starting a record company in New York right around the time of I didn't start it. I joined a company that was just getting started in New York City during the digital music revolution, and then continuing my sadomasochistic journey, decided that music industry was far too easy. So I got into movies instead. And that happened to coincide around the streaming revolution. And now all of the things that I learned during that time were really pointing towards this idea of empowering the creators, the artists, the people who make the entertainment, to have more control over their own destinies, to be able to actually, not just be afforded the opportunity to make the stories that they are passionate about, but to actually control how they are monetized and distributed. And as a result of that, we've built Bingeable to really be a solution, an alternative for indie film during what I believe is now the indie film revolution. I really think we are on the cusp of a massive seismic shift in the industry, and it will be driven by indies, because the old systems, having come through the digital music revolution, as I did, I truly believe that the movie industry is having its music industry moment, where it's just going to change forever, and as those old systems falter, the question is that vacuum that forms, who's going to fill it? And so I believe, Stephen, it's the indie filmmakers that can do that.
Yeah, which is what was so fascinating about our conversation last week with you, and that's why we wanted to have you on here to recap that. What was it in the music industry that kind of triggered this? This something's broken or something's not working for you.
Shall I go alphabetically or chronologically?
Yeah, it's only an hour program, so
right, okay. Well, I hope you guys bought more storage, because this could go long. Look, everybody knows that the entertainment industry, no matter what, is hard. It's extremely difficult to break through, and it kind of doesn't matter really who you are, especially at the early stages at the beginning. It's just incredibly difficult. But I sensed very, very quickly. My father is a brilliant technologist, very linear thinker. He looks at numbers and he says, this plus this plus this, that's going to equal this, even if we don't, everybody else doesn't see it yet. A brilliant man. And so I always brought kind of an analytical approach, even as an art school kid who got, signed to be a songwriter. My lovely wife's father's nightmare, as far as who he thought was going to marry his little girl. But, it became really clear to me that the path towards success in the music industry was fraught with peril, incredibly difficult. But the one data point that really stood out to me was that the top 1% of every record company's roster funded the bottom 99%. In other words, they had a 1% success rate, and that started me down the path of like, man, what if they didn't suck? What if they could do 2% success rate? The industry would explode. Like how can we figure out how to do that? But it also gave me the sense that there was a real opportunity that was forming out of that, which was really rooted in the idea that and I learned this very quickly as well, not only as an artist myself, but primarily helping other artists through their journey, that it is the artists, the creators, and the talent associated with a project that have the relationship with the audience, a real meaningful, emotional relationship with the audience. And that brings with it extraordinary power. And try to figure out how to harness that direct relationship to facilitate the marketing and distribution of entertainment has been my passion ever since.
Amazing. But one thing you were talking about in your intro that I wanted to touch on is this idea of like doing it at a high level, because there's you said you were a major label signed artist, right? So you were already in the echelon of like signed major label. That's like getting a studio gig in the film world, right? Or having a theatrical release as an indie that does 10 million plus or something like that. Yeah,
it's rarefied air. It really is. Yeah.
Rarefied air, but then even within that echelon, that top tier, you're saying there's a 1% of that percentage. So I'm curious because you've thought about this, I'm sure, like what are the things that not only get people into that top tier, but then become the 1%? Like what are the characteristics or the actions, the things that either you did or that you saw your peers do or that you're looking for in people that you're working with today?
And I mean, it's a good question, but my side question, hopefully I don't derail, is that the goal? Is that what we were trying to do? Or is that we're trying to solve? We're trying to say, hey, let's, so I don't know, maybe.
No, Garrett, that's the perfect follow-up to that first question. So addressing the first question, I will speak purely from my experience. It was a combination of dumb luck in many ways. I had, while I was going to Indiana University and majoring in visual communications, I was an art school kid. I had dreamed of making movies my whole life from the age of 10 when I saw Star Wars in the movie theater 38 times that summer it came out. I mean, I was absolutely obsessed. While all my friends were going and playing video games in the arcade and dumping quarters in, I was reading movies on filmmaking and special effects and making a stop motion animation sequel to Star Wars in my best buddy's garage. And so I was completely obsessed until around high school when I realized that girls like guitar players and singers. So I had that momentary lapse of judgment, and so I was kind of writing some songs and just kind of demoing them myself. And a buddy of mine that I met happened to be a studio musician in Nashville. He got a hold of the tape and gave it to his publisher, and boom, I'm suddenly coming down every weekend during my junior and senior years of college to write songs with some amazing people. And it was just an extraordinary experience. I was frankly, and look, this is going to sound like false modesty, but I was not very good. I didn't know what I was doing, but as a result of that, I met a bunch of guys. We put a band together. We started playing around, and next thing you know, they're like, "Well, you're kind of crap at writing songs for other people. Let's see how you do for yourself." And wound up, starting to make some records and starting to tour and all of that. And that, but again, that was at a time when the indie music scene was exploding. So this is the early 90s, which is going to date myself. So I again, dumb luck. I kind of fell into these amazing situations. That is not replicable. But the one thing that I do think is, and this is the hardest thing that you can ever, this might be changing. Let me say that at the outset. But back then, it's because I was relatively close to Nashville and able to go down there and be there, because that's where it was happening, right? It was at that time, you either in the music business, you either needed to be New York, LA, Seattle, or Nashville. And I was in Nashville. And so and then add to that my kind of relentlessness, my kind of I when I get going, as you can hear already, when I get going, it's hard to make me stop. So I just kept working and kept doing it. But, while it is, as you said, Darren, rarefied air, the reality is, in many ways, being part of that system ultimately held me back from doing what I really wanted to do in many ways, just as it helped me move forward. Garrett, to your follow-up question, it is, I used to always say, it's very weird feeling like there are a million kids standing in line behind me to fail as badly as I am. Like desperate to fail as badly as I am, right? That they wanted that record deal. They wanted to be on tour. They wanted to do all those things. And I'm like, guys, you don't understand. I'm like, when I'm not on tour, I am building decks and I'm remodeling homes with my guitar player. This is a brutal business. It's really, really hard. So I don't know, Garrett, to your follow-up question, had I had the chance to do it differently at that time, maybe the options weren't there, right? There wasn't a truly independent mechanism where, it was one thing to be able to make a record in your bedroom. It's another thing to get it onto shelves. And that system, which was archaic and very, very difficult, wasn't really possible on the indie scene. That's why when the digital music revolution came along, I embraced it fully. I'm like, this is it. Now we don't have to manufacture CDs and then put them on a truck and pay the store to actually put them on the shelf. We can just deliver it as ones and zeros. And that just changed everything for me. And so Garrett, long-winded way of saying, I don't know that that's necessarily the goal anymore. I think it is much more about building your own audience and delivering high quality entertainment to that audience that makes them not just want to watch, but to actively amplify your work to their social sphere. That is unlocking massive, massive global potential for people who might be making a film on their iPhone or their bedroom right now.
So you're going along, and in the music industry, you're recognizing, hey, there's a revolution happening, or there are artists that are building their own audience.
Yeah.
And they kind of have more control than those that are dependent upon a big label to put them in that 1% and carry push the wagon for everybody else to climb in.
Yeah. Well, when you're doing it yourself, you're the 100% the whole time, right? You never have to worry about the 1% or the 99%. It may not work. And, we started a little record company, me and some buddies, around that time. I always joke about the fact, like, for us, selling 10,000 units was like, we're living the dream, man. We're buying brand new Honda Accords. We're eating at Red Lobster. We are crushing it. So the scale was very different, but for us, that was massive, right?
Sure.
That was a huge success because it was just us,
Well, it's 100% applicable to our current situation right now. Absolutely. Where I can sell, a DVD from my own manufacturer in my own little warehouse and sell it on Amazon and one view.
DVD. That's adorable. That's
right.
adorable.
It's cute,
DVDs.
right? But
I remember those.
So one person buying that nets me the same amount as about 150,000 views on YouTube. Or whatever.
Exactly.
So it's like, okay,
the scale is completely different, and especially when you're able to do it yourself. Yeah.
And okay. So that's not quite where Bingeable comes in as far as the music scene. I mean, you shared with us last week, and I don't know if you can get into that story of finding an artist that was kind of doing something similar to owning her own audience.
Yeah. So one of the things that we were really focused on with our little indie label, and even the label that we started in New York, the guys who were the main founders who brought me into that label were pretty well known people, but they had really focused on the same thing that I had focused on. I think that's where the connective tissue was, which is we were very, very focused on marketing our little records out of Nashville, our little indie rock label out of Nashville. We were really focused on using what is referred to as street team marketing. What is street team marketing? Street team marketing is that I would make little baseball hats with our record company logo on it, and I would go around to college campuses. I would go around to wherever I could find the record stores. Go into the record stores and find that kid who's there every day, looking for music, and you give them that baseball hat and you say, "Tell all your friends you're in the music business now." And because you now work with a record company, right? And you get your friends to buy our CDs, you get your friends to show up at our shows. And when your friends show up at that show, you're going to be standing behind the velvet rope with a lanyard on that says all access. And you're going to tell your friends, "I'll see you guys after the show. I'm going to go have a beer with the band." And that the juice of that, the excitement that came from that was so strong that these guys would go out and market the hell out of our records, and it would cost me a baseball hat. That was it. That was the concept, right? Just by bringing them behind the velvet rope. That's how we referred to it. You're on the team now. You're part of the squad, right? You're part of the community that is going to be out here building this artist. And while again our scale was very, very small, that became really key to it. That's where I started learning about that, the idea that the artist is who has the relationship, and it goes beyond just having someone be an ardent fan and buying everything you put out and listening to it on blast everywhere they go, but actually about becoming active evangelists on behalf of your artists or on behalf of your project, whatever that is. That coincided with the digital music revolution and the advent of social media. Mm-hmm. And I, like many of my other friends, many of whom went on to be far more successful than I did, but we all recognized that social media was an opportunity to do digital street teams. That was it. That was the insight, right? It's like, can you get your community of fans to not just simply passively consume, but to actively advocate, to amplify these projects. And if you do that, the ripples, those rings going out from the center, like when you drop a rock in a pond, those can go farther and farther and farther. That was the insight that we had at that time. And so this I'll condense the story because it's far more convoluted than I'm about to imply. But essentially, we wound up creating an agency model with the pitch that was essentially, if you activate your audience on social media, and if you make them feel like they're part of the team, if you incentivize them, if you give them what they want and give them tools, they will go amplify your project so far and wide that you can reduce your traditional marketing spend. That was the idea that kind of drove that company, and it took a long time to get any kind of sign up or any kind of buy-in from anybody. And as it happens, our first major client happened to be somebody who is now one of the biggest stars in the world, and that really got us started. The last little caveat that I always try to add is that honestly, we added nothing to her career, but in many, many ways, I feel like she gave me mine. And it was an extraordinary experience. We learned a ton, and it really fed. It was all, in my mind, kind of a Trojan horse. What we were doing there was testing out the ideas that would ultimately become the cornerstone of Bingeable's amplification marketing concept.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, I have another question for you, because you've well, let's lean into the dumb luck part of the story, right? Which is you were time-wise right at the transition in the music industry from like analog to digital.
Absolutely.
Which that plays a big part into the success you've had, right? Yep. And then you happened to have it again as you're creating Bingeable and getting into the film industry at this time where the transition to streaming has happened. Absolutely. So what are the common things between those transition periods and the opportunity that you saw that led? I think that gives us an idea as to why Bingeable even exists.
Yeah, well, Darren, it's really interesting, and I've said this a lot over the years. I have been very, very fortunate to be part of these, or around for. Let's just say part is a little. That's too grand. I was there. I was around these critical moments where technology changed consumer behavior. Right? It was transformative. The new technologies, which was just every day. It's kind of like now with AI. It was like that back then. New technologies were just pouring out, and the people who embraced them and really ran with the way technology changed consumer behavior are the big winners that we talk about today. So I was very, very fortunate to be a part of that. And interestingly, and this is maybe not getting to the question that you asked, but I do think it's important to note, I think we are at one of those moments right now where there is this massive shift in consumer behavior. But unlike all of those other revolutions I was fortunate to be around for, this one is not driven by new technology. It is driven by a complete change in the consumer base, in the product set that they want. The industry has found itself no longer with a product market fit because the consumers are saying we want it a different way. Again, I see that as a massive opportunity for indie creators, because that means the audience isn't necessarily wanting what the big systems are offering. Therefore, we can make something brand new. Yes, I've been around for those milestones, and I've been very, very fortunate. My career has been, I've been able to stay afloat in a very volatile business because of my proximity to those revolutions. But this one is different.
That's a big idea, that this one's not driven by technology. So it's not an AI thing. It's not a vertical video thing. It's nothing like that.
It may change. It may change. The technology is going to change what and how things are made. But what we need to be focused on is this shift in consumer behavior. And it is the audience is screaming at creators for what they want. And those who recognize it and give them that are going to be the winners of the day.
Okay, so tell us more about that. That feels like we just came over the cusp of like a big idea. Yeah. So what is it that you guys are seeing in consumer behavior?
Well, okay, so there's lots of data touch points, and remember, I went to art school, so please feel free to fact check me on some of these numbers. But I'll give you my best recollection of what some of these numbers are, and I think that there's something really funny that you always have to remember about data. Data is, by its very definition, old. It's what happened, not what's going to happen, right? So the trick is not being able to look at the data and say, oh, I need to go there, because by the time you're there, the data is moved on. There's new data now. There's new things to be recognizing. So I spend a lot of time thinking about this idea of interpolation of disparate data points, with the idea of it's kind of the Wayne Gretzky mindset. What did Wayne Gretzky say? Here the greatest hockey player in the world said, I had two objectives. One, be where the puck was going to be, and then hit the puck where no one else was. And that is there's a lot of great stuff to be learned in that.
I've never heard the second part of that phrase.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, it's very simple. If you hit it into something, it's not going to go in the goal. So put it where the goalie isn't, it's so all of that to say, I think there's really interesting, but kind of disparate data points that if you draw a through line, you'll see where things are going. And that's I've tried to think about Bingeable and build Bingeable for that, which by the way, requires an enormous amount of patience, because sometimes it takes a lot of time to get for where you've built, in anticipation of the market coming there. But here's why we did what we did and why we're focused on it. I think there's more, but probably three main data points that I would like to point out that I think are absolutely critical. One is that 96, according to Nielsen, 96%, it might be 92%, something in the 90s, say that they trust a recommendation that they get from someone they follow online more than any ad. So advertising simply does not connect, right? It may serve some purposes, but it does not resonate with the audience in general. But a recommendation does. That's one. Digging further into that, the subset of that is the data set that says 77 or 72%, somewhere in the 70s, percent of Gen Z say they make 100% of their entertainment consumption choices based on what they hear about through social media. So that is a clear indication of how these audiences need to be reached. You need to be thinking about building networks of recommendation, that what we refer to as amplification, a community of people who are passionate about telling their friends about your project, should be everyone's main focus when it comes to marketing. And we built Bingeable to be a part of that equation. And then the last data point that I focus on that I think is absolutely transformational, and this is where I believe what I was saying about it not being a revolution led by new technology. This is the data point that I think reflects that the most. In 2019, I read a report that sent alarm bells in my head, which was that somewhere around 19% of consumers under the age of 35 said that they were doing what is now referred to as subscription cycling. And what that means is they would subscribe to a subscription platform, to watch a specific thing and then cancel and then move to the next, right? That was 19% of consumers under 35. Fast forward to today, and in 2025, according to Statista, that number is well over 50% of all consumers do subscription cycling. What does that mean? They're essentially treating subscription video on demand like transactional video on demand. There are lots of subsets to that data, right? Including a willingness to pay. I will pay to watch something I want to watch. 2, I am interested in the lowest friction access to that entertainment that I can possibly find, and I hate commitments. I am of the generation that I have my credit card down on a dozen different platforms, and I am their ideal consumer, because in the subscription model, the ideal consumer is someone who pays and watches nothing. That's actually their ideal consumer. And this is where I get to this very important point. I'll try to do this quickly. But it is important for people to understand that the shift that occurred, that's what streaming and subscription VOD did, is it took the entertainment industry out of the business of making, marketing, and selling movies and TV shows, and in the business of making, marketing, TV shows to sell subscriptions. These platforms, their products are not movies and TV shows. Their products are subscriptions. And that data set of over 50% of all consumers saying, I don't want that product anymore. I don't want the subscription product. I want the movie, but I don't want the subscription. So that churn, all of that has led to, I mean, you know, again, there's this very, very dark narrative that's going around Hollywood right now. I'm sitting here today in the middle of this crazy industry in this crazy town. And what nobody's really talking about or saying is that data is absolutely terminal for the subscription model. You cannot maintain that level of churn. And again, don't mistake what I'm saying with some sort of like bet that they're all going to fail. These are some of the smartest people in the world. They are loaded. They have tons of cash. They will figure something out. But very much like how the music industry responded to the shift in consumer behavior from physical goods sold at stores that they controlled and that they owned to suddenly this free for all of digital discovery and consumption of music. And the way that the music industry basically just did this and said, if we just ignore it, it'll go away. I see that happening in Hollywood right now. And again, the question is, do you want to make your bet to try and be a part of that system, which is at best plateaued and at worst faltering? One might even say crumbling. Or do you want to be thinking about how you can take advantage of those shifts in consumer behavior, which basically scream for a direct-to-consumer approach? Talent to fan is the future, and in my mind, and that's what we're squarely focused on.
I feel like we need to just hit the pause button and process all that for a few minutes. But Garrett, what do you have follow up for that?
Well, I think you've described the perfect lead up to, if I'm an independent filmmaker and we're talking about Bingeable, tell me what that is. Simplify that on a, Darren mentioned he graduated from 6th grade this morning.
Yes. So, again, congratulations. That's
way
amazing.
To go. Tell me that as a 6th grader. Or as me, an independent filmmaker that has very little understanding of data points and trajectories. And look, I want to make my movie and I want to get it to my audience. Yeah. And Bingeable seems like a solution for that. So
yeah. That's why we built Bingeable, Garrett. That it really is honestly to facilitate that that opportunity for filmmakers. Again, it's not a panacea. It's a way to do it. It's not necessarily the way to do it. And it really, Bingeable is designed to work for a very specific type of project, and I'm happy to kind of dive into how we look at that and what we're thinking of. But when it's all said and done, if you walk into a financier and you say, I have an idea for a movie and I want to put it into a system that is specifically designed to make independent films, to make money on behalf of the middlemen who put these movies out on an independent film, but virtually guaranteeing that the independent film itself will not turn a profit. Or do you go to that financier and say, I've got a great idea for a movie and I have 1 million fans connected to this project who absolutely passionately want to advocate on its behalf. And we have a mechanism whereby we can not only get to those fans first and deliver directly to them the ability to watch our movie, but then we can also empower them to go and amplify that movie and actually make them part of our business plan, part of our business model, turning the audience into the marketing energy and getting those ripples, as I described, those ripples going out from the center farther and farther and farther. And by the way, it costs you nothing unless somebody actually buys the movie, right? That's the secret sauce right there. And so it's important, I think, to understand kind of the concept behind Bingeable. Bingeable is the 6th grade answer. Bingeable is an affiliate platform for movies and TV shows where the affiliates are the stars of the movie, the artists who provide music for the soundtrack, the producers, directors, all the way down to the grips and PAs, but also the audience become affiliates for the movie as well. And it's a very simple idea. It's not a simple idea because building it has been very, very difficult and very expensive. But the idea is most understandable like this. If you are a movie star and you already have a fan base, a social media followers, we give you the ability to go to your followers and say, here's my new movie. Watch it on my own, what we call individual VOD channel or IVOD, right? It is a distinct standalone VOD channel. And every time one of that star's fans or followers or friends clicks rent and watches that movie, that star gets 20% of $1 gross revenue, which is the fabled promise in Hollywood for the last 50 years, is the idea of $1 gross revenue participation. But it is a myth. It doesn't actually exist, because whoever the exhibitor is, they're going to take their cut first, no matter what. So there is no such thing as $1 gross, except in this model, because you're the one who got the sale. So therefore, we pay a 20% commission to the star, to the grip, to the PA, and to some fan in Ohio. We pay them 20% of the $1 gross revenue that comes in anytime one of their friends or followers or fans rents the movie through their iVOD. And that's the model. We've got a lot of bells and whistles underneath, including amplification marketing tools that we've developed, and most importantly, the accounting system and the way we've built that are all proprietary and very, very different from the traditional model. But at its heart, it is a marketing platform where the amplifiers are the creators and their audience.
I think it's brilliant. I love, I'll substitute your simple idea for brilliant idea, because as a filmmaker, we've got 100 people that are working on the film. They're all getting their day rate, and they walk away with their check. And then 6 months later, the movie show, we put the movie in a theater, and they go, "Oh, we should get people to go see this movie that I worked on." They don't get any incentive for that. So
absolutely, and neither do the stars, Garrett. Neither do the stars.
Yes,
remember, they like in the old system, there's very little motivation for them to act other than contractual obligation. And I think I joked with you guys last time, as someone who's worked with some of the biggest stars in the world in my life, I have learned a very important lesson. The worst possible way to motivate artists to do something they don't want to do is to contractually obligate them. It's a terrible model. Yeah.
You're contractually obligated to like and promote this film. Yes. And you'll see that in their press tour and their interviews, and you go, exactly. They're there for the contract.
Remember, they made that movie a year ago, and the check that they got to make that movie was spent a year ago. And now you're telling them, now go promote this movie. So all the money that comes in goes to me. Appreciate you.
Good luck.
Good luck getting a really heartfelt push from your talent.
Okay, so you've flipped the script on that, and now we've got, hey, the movie is coming out, Faith of Angels, you guys worked on this, and we're going to be on this platform or whatever, and here is your personal link, your iVOD link that you can now share with your family and friends and everything. Now, as a filmmaker, my question then is, wait a second. Already I'm spending 30% for my distributor and 15% for my sales agent, and then there's the product cost, and you solve that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I think it requires different thinking from the beginning. And Darren, you and I talk about this all the time on social media. The idea of bringing your audience and bringing people into the process at the very beginning, getting them to become vested in the project. And I'll insert this little thing here as to why we think this is such a powerful concept, especially for indie film. Ryan Reynolds, who I admire greatly as a business person, and I think would be very difficult to argue that as it relates to movie stars, there is no one better at using social media to market his side hustles, right? His $2 billion and $2 billion side hustles and one hundreds of millions of dollar side hustle. He has done that strictly through his savvy of social media. And I have been screaming this quote over and over again. So forgive me if anybody in this audience has heard me or seen me post about this, because I've done it about 1,000 times. But it is so telling, and it speaks to exactly this question. Ryan Reynolds said, and I'm going to try and quote it verbatim, people want to have a sense of ownership over the success of something. In other words, they don't want to just be watchers. They want to be a part of it. And if you can understand that psychology, that consumer behavior, and harness it from the very, very beginning, what you're doing is you're not only building an audience around your film before you even made it, but you're also creating this mechanism when it comes out of A, immediate sales, and B, amplification marketing, recommendations going out. And that so that needs to be kind of the mindset of filmmakers today. And it requires, different muscle groups than most filmmakers are used to. I believe the future of indie film is multipreneurial. It's going to be people who are amazing storytellers who know how to use technology and the tools to create great, beautiful, visual, powerful stories, who also understand how to build community, how to engage audiences, and how to market their movies from the beginning to end. And if you do that, then you do not need a sales agent. You do not need a distributor. You do not need an exhibitor, because you and your community are all three of those things.
I don't know if you can see the smile on my face, if it's big enough or not. But,
I mean, it's no, I just graduated from 6th grade smile, but look, it's solid. It's solid.
You guys keep saying that. I don't think you understood what I said this morning.
You didn't graduate? Look, don't, no.
6th grade graduation.
Yeah,
I have
no shame. No
He's 12.
He took you.
It's amazing.
Okay.
No, you're right. That's a good point, Darren. Thank you. I stand corrected.
I felt very strongly like I needed to help everyone understand that I did not graduate from 6th grade today.
I mean, that's it, no shame, man. Lots of people don't graduate from elementary school. Don't worry about it.
Sorry you didn't.
Yeah. With ChatGPT, you don't even need to anymore, right?
I'm sorry, Darren. Here we are on your podcast,
making fun of you.
Just owning the host. Okay.
It's all out of love, Darren.
We'll get back on track because we only if for the third act of our podcast. Where are we now on Bingeable? I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm listening to this podcast going, holy cow, this sounds awesome. I've got 100 people already that want to help get my film out there.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, and to caveat on that, because Garrett did it to me earlier, like where does it fit in the release window in your mind?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. So, I'm going to answer that second part first and back into the first part. So the thesis of Bingeable is that if you can show an ancillary release window streamer, right, that in your initial release window, regardless of how it's released, that it had success, a form of success, then the thesis is that your what used to be MGs, they don't do MGs anymore, but now your license fees could be more favorable down the line. So in that construct, we fit into, I believe, the initial release window best. And because Bingeable is, I've really focused on kind of the IVOD component, because I think, the vast majority of indie films most likely will not have success at the box office, just a real meaningful success. The economics are very difficult just in general, but it's so hard. It's such a high friction experience. Again, that report that came out a few months ago from all the cinema groups coming together and doing this study said that a huge majority of consumers said they consider a night at the movies absolutely worth the money, like a good experience. Now, you got to factor in their own bias and how those questions may have been asked. But I do believe that's true. I think that the consumers are saying we will pay for an experience to see something that we want, for sure. The problem is that they are, the data is horrific. It used to be that people would see a couple movies a month, and now the data is the vast majority see maybe a couple of movies a year. So as an indie filmmaker, being able to break through on the theatrical side is very challenging. So the IVOD model, the direct to fan IVOD model, is really meant to be an alternative to the theatrical window. that first release window, going direct to consumers. The differences would be not the least of which, it does not depend on opening weekend. You can have a longer run and you can let the film build over time. The concept of amplification marketing is it's not a big splash and then fades. It's a slow build into a big splash and then fades, right? So the ability to do that, I think, is really important. But we also have the ability, you started the question with where is Bingeable now? I'll kind of end with that. But we are working on the ability to also sell movie theater tickets the same way, right? That it's amplification marketing. If I'm a star, if I'm an artist who provided music to the soundtrack, and by the way, for filmmakers, really think about that part as part of your model. When we're talking about a bingeable release, the musicians tend to have more followers on social media than movie stars do. Not universally true, but in general. And in the old model, when you're doing a needle drop in your film by an artist that you love for a song that's perfect for the scene, you pay a sync license. You pay a fee to the record company. You pay a fee to the publisher. That goes in the artist's recoupable account, and they will never see a penny of it. In other words, they have no motivation to help you market and sell your movie. However, in our model, every time one of their fans rents that movie through their iVod, they get a check. They get 20% of that transaction, not the publisher, not the label, the artist. And that creates a huge, incentive for them to go and push it. So all of that to say, if you are releasing theatrically, cool, we can help you sell movie theater tickets, right? Fine. It's just an API from whether it's Fandango or from the cinema chains themselves. It's actually not super complex. So that is one component. Right now, we're really focused on primarily providing the alternative for indie film to go direct to consumer, where they market and sell the movie through social media directly to their consumers with no middlemen. That's how we get the math completely different because there is no sales agent, there is no distributor, there is no exhibitor. You are it, and that means you can go to your financiers and say, in this model, unlike the traditional model where you're going to get at best 5 cents of every dollar to recoup your cost of production and marketing, by the way, the financier still has to technically recoup the cost of marketing, even if they didn't write the check, which now more and more they're having to. That 5 cents of every dollar means you are never going to recoup from that initial release window. Your best bet is a long chain of licensing deals that you do down the line. But in this model, you can say to your financiers, you're able to recoup from a minimum of 16 times the amount of gross revenue of a traditional release, because all those middlemen are gone. And also the cost of marketing is significantly less. So everybody wins.
Sounds like you cracked it, man. I'm excited to see. So when Garrett says, where is it now? Like if there's a filmmaker that's listening to this, they can go to Bingeable and sign up, or where are you at?
So we do it. It's not like YouTube. You can't just sign up and upload anything. It does have to be formally licensed. And as a result of that, we have to be very, very selective about what we are connecting with. We've released a few movies this way to this point, but intentionally at a very small scale. We still, I would consider our platform as it sits right now very much an alpha version. The guts are working exactly the way we want. The actual presentation layer, the front end, is where we need to kind of make some tweaks. So we're working on that. We're also taking some of the data we collected from releasing a movie from Steven Soderbergh and David Letterman, and now most recently a movie about Lionel Messi, the soccer star. What we've learned from doing those little experiments, where we've not done a big push, we've just kind of looked to see what the market does with those. What we've learned has told us that there are some things that we can really improve upon as it relates to our user experience, both on the consumer side, but also on the amplifier side. So we're working on those right now. The platform is up and it works. And if you've got a film that you want to put up and put out, we are happy to have that conversation. But I will tell you, expectations need to be set, right? Which is, having 100 fans who will actively go out and market and sell your movie is awesome, but that's small, right? Your expectations should be relatively low. That their reach is only going to be so far, and you know the real ideal scenario, and this is kind of what we're thinking about because we're also working towards producing films that are designed to meet the bingeable model. We're really focused on films that have ensemble casts, that have people who have different audiences, but fans who are connected to them. We want the soundtrack to be banging with artists who are active and out there promoting and helping to, and who will actively help and promote the movie. And that's kind of our ideal scenario. Anything less than that, you need to create appropriate expectations. And I know we're long on time, so I won't go into kind of how we calculate the actual math of what you can expect, but just understand we're thinking along the lines of at like kind of the sweet spot being maybe 1% of the social media footprint of the whole project converting into paying customers. So you need to be thinking along those lines, and the more social media, bigger the social media footprint you have, 1% becomes more and more meaningful.
Yeah. Garrett, do you know any movies that kind of fit that description?
Nice.
Amazing. Stephen, you've been generous with your time. We usually go like 30, 35 minutes with guests, but we feel like we keep talking about this because there's so many great ideas that you've shared today. Hopefully people listen and pay attention about like this shift that's happening and where things are headed, whether they end up on Bingeable or not. I think it's important to realize that things are changing and you got to adapt as well. It doesn't mean you necessarily need to go make 1 minute long vertical videos for short form. That's
or you can,
or you can.
I got to be honest. I think that's the new pilot model. You can build massive audiences very quickly and tell the first 10 pages of your movie story, and then go make the rest. I mean, I'm actually, we're making some moves to kind of lean into that very hard.
There we go. My goodness. So where's the best place for people to connect with you? Like we keep mentioning social media, LinkedIn is where we connected, and it's great having that relationship there, but where's the best place for people to find out more about what you're up to?
Well, I will put in a shameless plug for LinkedIn right now. That's where I am doing most of my kind of posting and postulating and theorizing, and where I'm connecting with most people as I connected with you. But I also think that very importantly for independent filmmakers, you need to be treating your movies like a startup. You need to be thinking like a business person from the beginning. And the people who are in the indie film space, or even just the film space in general, who are talking about all of this stuff, who are sharing ideas, who are coming up with a new vision and a new path forward for this industry, those conversations are happening on LinkedIn. And so my advice would be, if you want to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to kind of reach out. I've got a free newsletter that I do every week, like Darren Ewan, Craftsman Film. So there's ways to kind of hear some more of these thoughts for what they're worth, but also to connect with a community of filmmakers who are actively envisioning a new industry. One of the things that I have said is like we need to stop relying on the people who broke the industry to fix it. And the reality is, I don't know that the old systems can be fixed. I think they need to be replaced. And the birthplace of the new indie film industry, I believe, is on LinkedIn.
So well said. Stephen Murray, thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you. I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Wow, Darren. Thanks for inviting him. What a concept, and he's certainly thought it through very well and spoke well about it. So thank you.
Yeah, I think one of my big takeaways from that is how important it is to be analytical, to think about where things are headed, to anticipate and then make directional changes accordingly. Those were a lot of words to say, like the importance of anticipation, the importance of being able to see what's coming and not just float along, but to actually like stick your oar in the river and divert yourself left or right and say, well, I want to go this way or I want to go this way, and this is where I want to end up. because the industry is kind of going one way. And if you just kind of sit on a raft and let it take you there, it may not end up in a place that you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. And from a very like simpleton's perspective of it, I'm in conversations yesterday with people that are helping, a sales agent for Faith of Angels, and they're getting their share on everybody's work. And I just think, how do we make that a little bit more equitable?
Yeah.
And this seems like a great solution to do that. Yeah, what a great concept. Well, and you go, okay, our audience, we've seen it with our movies where the audience is impacted and they want to share the movie. So same thing. It's not just people that worked on the movie. It's saying, now when, Edna posts to her little Facebook followers, says, I saw a really neat movie that, touched my heart. She now puts a link to her own little iVod thing, and
Yeah.
those that watch it from there get to see it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the Dennis family, who have been like the biggest proponents of Faith of Angels because it's their story. They've shared it and invited hundreds of people to come watch it and see it in theaters or premieres or screenings. But even my dad, who's got, probably 300 people follow him on Facebook, was
Yeah,
able to like sell out a screening in Sacramento, my hometown,
yeah,
because he just texted and called all of his friends and said, we're doing this and there's 50 seats and I want you to come. And it's like, okay, but it doesn't require a massive audience if you have that affinity and that trust.
yeah,
So I'm curious if how the numbers actually play out, if he can over time be tracking like, oh, this movie had potential reach of 10 million people or 100,000 people or 5 million people. What does the actual conversion rate look like? But I don't think it's strictly a function of the size of the audience. I really think it's about the affinity and the connection and the relationship you have with that audience, because your 7,000 or 15,000 people on an email list are more connected to you than, an algorithm that can reach 10 million people because you put money behind it.
I agree.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it's awesome. I look forward to seeing the different iterations of it, and seeing it evolve into something that is very, very disruptive. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's cool.
Very cool time. I love that, there are other people thinking about how to be truly independent. He even dropped that phrase, truly independent, during our episode today. So it's just like, all right, we're kindred spirits if we're talking about the same thing here. Garrett, any updates for this week you wanted to share?
This afternoon, I'm doing a read through for a short film that is on the next phase of development, and we'll see from the read through whether this distributor wants to fund it, which is kind of fun. It's kind of fun to do a short film. It's very, very low pressure, and get to interact with some, friends from past films, some actors
Yeah.
and talent, and so that's exciting. And then tomorrow I head out to Africa for 5 weeks for a shoot, uh, all over Africa. We're going Ivory Coast to, um, to Rwanda, to Kenya, to Democratic Republic of Congo, um, and so we'll be there on a couple of iPhones, running around interviewing and creating narratives, narrative vignettes of what we interview. So it's a different form of filmmaking, but one that I'm excited to kind of get back into.
That's amazing. Very cool. I don't really have much to report. We're still cranking along, making progress every day on this fund. But, every day there's more outreach and more people I'm connecting with and having good conversations with not only investors, but people who are connected to investors that are in this space. And so I'm realizing more and more that a lot of times it's hard to connect with the money people, the people who have the money. A lot of times they've purposefully put like a barrier or a layer between you and them, and they have a
Yeah,
guy who's like their crypto guy, or they have a guy who's their film investment guy, or they have a real
yeah,
estate guy. And like, okay, so every day it's navigating this complex terrain of film finance to go, oh, I didn't realize this was an option. Maybe let's explore this path a little bit. So that's kind of the path I'm on, is finding some of these, whether you're broker dealers or just trusted investment advisors of these family funds or family offices or high net worth individuals, and going, oh, you manage their money when it comes to film. Well, we should have a conversation. And those are way more fruitful than, cold DMing people on LinkedIn who I think have money based on their name.
Um, my experience with those sometimes is the high net worth individual says, "Oh, that sounds fantastic. Talk to so and so. He managed my money," and that's the same as an actor saying, "Yeah, I'd love to be a part of it. Talk to my agent." And then maybe perhaps the intent is the deal falls apart. But
Yeah.
that's the cynicism and
There's definitely a difference
But-
between you should talk to my guy, here's his name or her name, and let me text my guy and put you in a text thread. So I know when I'm getting
there you go.
They're texting somebody and including me in the text, that's a signal of this needs to happen, make it happen. Whereas the other one is good luck.
Good luck. It's like, I don't want to tell you no, but I've hired a guy to tell you no.
I've hired a guy to tell you no. Hey, let me have you talk to my no guy.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, so good.
Okay, man. Well, a great conversation. Thank you very much. And I know that I definitely understood about your son graduating from 6th grade. Congratulations to him.
It's just exciting. Probably something I need to go to therapy about, that I felt the need to correct you guys and stop making fun of me.
Oh no, little joking, little ribbing is always fun. Okay, man. Good to see you. Looking forward to chatting. Hopefully, I'll be able to chat with you next week. We'll set up a time that matches the significant time difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Truly Independent. To join us on the journey, be notified, and ask us questions about today's episode, head over to 3coinpro.com/podcast and put in your name and an email address. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app and be sure to share this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Our intro and outro music is Election Time by Kjartan Abel.